But I want to invite you for the next few minutes to just be open to the possibility, even if you're just a guest here this morning, of the miraculous. Now, of course, if you assume before we even start talking that a miracle can't happen, well then, of course, in the end, you're going to come to the conclusion that a miracle didn't happen. But is that really a rational assumption to start with? When is the last time you stepped back and just took a moment to just pause from the busy distraction of life and just have awe at the fact that we are even here, that any of this is here, that we are here thinking about these things right now, that we are sitting on a rock that is rotating at 1,000 miles an hour while it's currently flying around the sun at 67,000 miles an hour as part of a galaxy that's being hurled through the universe at over 1,000,000 miles an hour right now. And that universe has laws that are so orderly that we can sit here and think. Life's so complex that the DNA strands from your 37 trillion cells, if they were laid end to end, they would reach to the sun and back about 200 times. That is remarkable. I just find it amazing how often we just walk through life with our heads down as if it's normal. It's not normal. Life is absolutely remarkable. I call it the normalcy of the supernatural, and I just want you to consider with me big picture explanations of the universe. In other words, how did all of this get here? When you actually think it through, there are only three primary options. Number one, God made it. And as a Christian, I might just put my hand up and say, yeah, I can see that that's quite an astounding, remarkable, extraordinary, miraculous option. But you have to ask the question, what are the other alternatives? Well, here's one other alternative. The universe just popped into existence from nothing for no reason whatsoever. Well, that too is a really odd option, right? I mean, the physical stuff in our everyday lives doesn't generally just pop in and out of existence. If it doesn't now, why should we think that it did at the beginning of the universe? How about a third option? The universe has always existed, extending infinitely back in time without any explanation. I think the science tells against this, but even if that were true, it might explain each part of the universe with a part that came before it, but it still would give absolutely no explanation for why there is. And I call this the normalcy of the supernatural. When you think about big picture explanations of the universe, these are the only three logical options, and every one of them is crazy. So you can't just write one of them off because it seems to be too extraordinary. Extraordinary is all we've got. And even if you say, you know what, I can see that all of those options are extraordinary, so what I'm going to do is just remain agnostic, I'm not going to commit myself to any of them, well, logically, you still have to be committed to one of these three things being true. And that itself is crazy. So the conclusion that I come to is just that we live in a miraculous world. Whether you walked in here this morning as a believer in God, as a theist, or as an atheist, or as an agnostic, I don't think you can get around that fact. Every one of us is committed to believing something extraordinary. And I was reminded of this a number of years ago when a friend of mine, a retired Princeton professor, he wrote to me, and at this point I had come to Christian faith. And we were having a dialogue back and forth about the merits of Christian faith, for and against. And he wrote this email to me with all of his reasons objecting to the Christian faith. And then at the end of the email, as if to sort of trump all the other points that he had made, he simply wrote, "Nor can I believe in a virgin birth." No further argument or explanation. As if to say, it would be crazy to believe in such a thing. And I began drafting a sort of email response to him, trying to explain why perhaps you could consider believing in a virgin birth, this idea of Jesus being born of the Virgin Mary, of a woman who had not had sex, and there being a miracle in the way that Jesus had been born. But then it dawned on me as I was writing this email, maybe he already believes in a virgin birth. Maybe everyone believes in a virgin birth, whether they realize it or not. Christians believe that Jesus, as God himself, was miraculously born of a virgin. And now I'm willing as a Christian to just admit that is outside the realm of the ordinary. But what exactly is the alternative? Take the brilliant Cambridge physicist, the late Stephen Hawking. This is his attempt to propose an atheistic birth of our universe. And he says the universe can and will create itself from nothing. Spontaneous creation is the reason there is something rather than nothing, why the universe exists, why we exist. And I want to ask the question when I read that, is that any less miraculous of a birth than Jesus being born of a virgin? Or consider the words of the atheist philosopher Quentin Smith. This is a man who's had a reputable career, 12 books, 150 peer-reviewed articles, and here's his best attempt at an explanation of the universe from an atheistic perspective. He says, the fact of the matter is that the most reasonable belief is that we came from nothing, by nothing, and for nothing. We should acknowledge our foundation in nothingness and feel awe at the marvelous fact that we have a chance to participate briefly in this incredible sunburst that interrupts, without reason, the reign of non-being. That definitely sounds like a virgin birth. And again, I think we're led to the same conclusion. We live in a mind-blowing world. There is no getting around that. I don't think it's a matter of whether you believe in a virgin birth. I think it's just a matter of which virgin birth you choose to accept. Is Christianity crazy? Maybe, in some sense. It's certainly extraordinary. But we live in an extraordinary world. And every person, regardless of what they do or don't believe about God, is committed to believing something extraordinary. I think the main question is, do we have good reason to believe it?